What's up everyone, Darcblade here with another Hunter's Guide to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. In this video, we're going to be bringing you some full set budget builds, this time for the Lance. Now what is a full set budget build? Well, it's a build constructed from one armor set from one monster. Okay, it's coupled with weapons and talismans from different sources, but it's aimed to minimize farming and give you a build that is strong enough to get through the Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak story. Now as always, if you find these builds and videos interesting or helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel as well as leaving a like on the video, as I try to bring you a variety of builds for a variety of ways to play. Now when it comes to the Lance, it's been improved since the base version of Monster Hunter Rise. The increase to its damage numbers is definitely welcomed in Sunbreak, and thus the Lance has grown in popularity, at least a little bit. At its core, it's still a strong defensive weapon with some of the highest survivability in the game thanks to the giant shield it wields. But it shouldn't be overlooked for damage output either. The Lance is one of the most accurate melee weapons, as you can pinpoint your thrust attacks to hit specific monster parts. The builds in this budget build video tend to highlight all of these aspects, with one focused more on DPS and the other on defense. So the first build, let's call it the defensive budget build, or for a more colourful name, the Baroth budget build. This build features the entire Baroth set, so it gives us a strong defense, but it also is coupled with attack focused decorations to give us quite a balanced build overall. So for this build you'll need the full Baroth set, which includes the Baroth Helm X, Mail X, Van Braces X, Coil X and Greaves X. For your Petalace, this is down to personal preference, but I will advise going for the Absolute Petalace for that extra health when you're going through Sunbreak's story for the first time. And then for your Talisman, you'll need to get a Talisman that has access to at least Weakness Exploit level 2 on it, whether it be via the skills actually being on the Talisman itself or via the decoration slots. As for the weapon, I'm using the Ouroboros Serpent Blade, which is part of the Remobra tree. Now remember, when it comes to the weaponry, the weapons shown in these videos are at their absolute highest upgrade, so yours may be lower, but you should still have similar results. As for the Rampage skill, go for one of the anti-species slots until you can get to the Daora Soul Jewel to give you the Kushala Daora Rampage skill. So when it comes to the decorations, I've first gone for Tenderizer Jaws to max out Weakness Exploit, then gone for Venom Jaws to max out Poison Attack, Sharp Jaws to max out Protective Polish, Grinder Jaws to max out Speed Sharpening, Critical Jaws to max out Crit Boost, and then finally you have a jaw to play around with, to which I've gone for a Brace Jaw for a point in flinch free. So if you've done what I've done here, you'll have a build with a raw attack of 377 with a poison rating of 56, you'll also have white sharpness, and you'll have 10% base affinity, which can be 60% when you take into account weakness exploit. You'll also have a strong defense of 759 that is strong against every single element, especially thunder, but unfortunately slightly weak to fire. As for the switch skills, with the Lance, I tend to say they're down to personal preference in all honesty. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you'll have Attack Boost at level 5. Attack Boost is a skill that increases the raw attack of a build, and at level 4 or above, it grants us a percentage bonus to that raw attack. You'll also have Guard at level 5. Guard is a skill that increases how effectively we can block monster attacks, so it reduces the knockback as well as the stamina consumption used to actually block an attack. You'll then have Defense Boost at level 5. Defense Boost is a skill that increases our defense as well as our elemental resistances. You'll then have Crit Boost at level 3, increasing the raw attack damage of our attacks when they crit a monster. You'll then have Weakness Exploit at level 3, increasing our affinity by 50% when we're attacking monster weak points, which should be easy for the Lance with its accurate thrusting and poking attacks. You'll then have Poison Attack at level 3, increasing the poison rating and build-up of the ailment. I really enjoy poison weapons in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. I find they are a useful element to make use of, as we're able to poison monsters, dealing some unseen damage over time on them. Also on top of that, the Venom Jaws that increase the poison attack are only tier 1 decorations, whilst all the other ailment decorations are tier 2. Anyway, you also have Protective Polish at level 3, allowing us to put a protective coating over our sharpness gauge whenever we sharpen our weapon. This will prevent any sharpness loss for a small duration of time. You'll then have Offensive Guard at level 3, a very useful skill for the Lance. Basically, after executing a perfectly timed guard, whether that be through our counter attacks or actually manually guarding, it will increase our raw attack. You'll then have Speed Sharpening at level 3, allowing us to quickly sharpen our weapon, allowing us to put that Protective Polish coating over our sharpness gauge even quicker. You'll then have Spread Up at level 2, a byproduct of the armor. It's a gunner skill, it's not needed on the Lance whatsoever, as it only increases the damage of spread ammo or spread arrows. You'll then have Muck Resistance at level 2, negating any limitation to our hunter when we're walking through muck or deep snow. You also have Affinity Sliding at level 1, which is a very niche skill that increases our affinity for a short time after we slide. And then finally you have Flinch Free at level 1, which is a result of our optional decoration, the Flinch Jewel. Basically, this prevents minor knockbacks from hunters and especially our allies. So there you have it. As you can see, it is a defensive build, but has quite a few quality of life and offensive options, making it in some respects an all-round build. Some of you may be wondering why I haven't gone for the guard up skill, so we can block unblockable attacks. Well, it's because the lance has an innate ability in its moveset to provide it that guard up skill through the power guard. And normally monster unblockable attacks are telegraphed long enough for you to activate this. It would have been nice to have guard up, of course, though. But anyway, every build out there in Monster Hunter has various pros and cons. No build is perfect. And when it comes to the pros for this build, its biggest is its survivability. Thanks to its defense rating, as well as its elemental resistances and having maxed out guard, and the innate ability of the lance to block attacks, these will all help our survival when on a hunt. On top of that, this build also has okay damage output. It's not going to be the highest in the game, but the DPS skills we have, such as attack boost, crit boost, weakness exploit and poison attack, means that we should be able to take down monsters in a timely fashion. And then finally for the pros is that this build comes with quite a few quality of life skills, from protective polish, speed sharpening, muck resistance and more. These will all add to the quality of the hunt, making it feel a little bit easier than it maybe is. But of course there are cons. One of the biggest cons for this weapon is there will be at times where we can potentially run into sharpness issues. Yes, we do have protective polish and speed sharpening to counter it, but it's still something to be mindful of. The lance is able to burn through sharpness gauges quite quickly. And the other con is, unfortunately, we have no evasion skills, which means that we purely have to rely on the lance, moves and abilities when it comes to having our weapon drawn and encountering the slow mobility that the weapon has. But regardless, this is a strong beginner set that I would recommend for anyone who is thinking of picking up the lance at the start of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. But of course there is always more than one build out there, and the second build for the lance forgoes that defensive aspect in favour of offense. It has reduced guarding capabilities, but the increased offense, as well as a few evasion abilities, counters this downside. So with that I present the Bloodbright budget build. This build uses the full Malzeno set to give us a strong offense, quality of life and more. So for this build you'll need the full Malzeno set, which includes the Malzeno helm, Malzeno mail, Malzeno braces, Malzeno coil and the Malzeno greaves. I'm also using the absolute petalace again. And then for your talisman you'll need a talisman that will allow you to get protective polish to level 3, whether that's through the skills being on the actual talisman itself or via the decoration slots. As for my weapon, I'm using the masked layer, which is the Malzeno lance. Remember, you may have a lower level version of this, but it should still provide you with similar results, and even though it's a dragon based lance, the raw attack is strong enough that this can be used against even dragon resistant monsters. Unfortunately for the Rampage skill we don't have much to choose from, so I've simply gone for a Spirit Bird doubled Rampage decoration. And speaking of decorations, you've got a few to play around with, so I've gone for Jumping Jaws, which is optional for points in Evade Extender. I've then gone for Critical Jaws to max out Crit Boost, Grinder Jaws to max out Speed Sharpening, a Shield Jaw for a few points in Guard Up, Destroy Jaws to max out Part Breaker, and then finally a few Steadfast Jaws for points in Stun Resistance. So if you've done what I've done here, you have a build with a raw attack of 383 with a dragon rating of 41, you have purple sharpness, you have 0% base affinity, but this can be 50% when you take into account weakness exploit, and you have a strong defense of 751 that is strong against water and thunder, but unfortunately weak to the other elements, especially dragon. As for the switch skills, I would say these are down to personal preference, although I will point out that with the lack of guard, having insta block can come in useful. Anyway, as for the skills, first of all we'll have attack boost at level 4, increasing the raw attack, and at level 4 or above it grants us a percentage bonus to our raw attack. You'll then have crit boost at level 3, increasing the damage of our attacks whenever they crit a monster, but only applies to the raw portion of an attack, not the elemental portion. You'll then have weakness exploit at level 3, increasing our affinity by 50% when we're attacking monster weak points. You'll then have protective polish at level 3, allowing us to put that protective coating over our sharpness gauge, preventing loss of that purple sharpness whenever we sharpen our weapon. You'll then have blight resistance at level 3, negating all elemental blights on our hunter, a very useful quality of life skill. You'll then have part breaker at level 3, allowing us to break monster body parts more easily, and this works well in unison with the Bloodbright skill, which we'll talk about in a moment. You'll then have speed sharpening at level 3, allowing us to sharpen our weapon exceedingly quickly, allowing us to reapply that protective polish coating. You'll then have Wirebug Whisperer at level 3, increasing the cooldown of our wirebugs, as well as how long we can hold additional wirebugs. You'll then have Bloodbright at level 3, which is the main highlight of this build, which whenever we're attacking monster body parts that have been broken, hence the reason we've taken Part Breaker, a portion of the damage dealt to those broken monster body parts will be used to heal our hunter, allowing us to stay in the fight for longer, and allowing us to continue a fight without having to sheath our weapon and drink a potion. Anyway, you'll then have guard up at level 2. This is kind of an optional decoration skill, but is a last ditch effort for blocking unblockable attacks. You'll then have evade extender at level 2, allowing us to hop and dodge at increased distances. And then finally you'll have stun resistance at level 2, which is, to be honest, a completely optional skill. As a result of the steadfast decorations, you can replace this if you so wish. This basically reduces the stun effects on our hunter. So there we have it. As you can see, this build is definitely leaning more towards DPS over defense. Yes, it does have some defensive aspects of course, as well as quality of life, but this is a build I'd recommend for if you want to deal damage with the lance. But even this build comes with pros and cons. One of its biggest pros is its damage output. Thanks to having attack boost, crit boost, weakness exploit and more, we're able to bring down monsters in a relatively quick time. On top of that, this build has the Blood Bright skill, allowing us to heal ourselves whilst in combat. And then finally, this build has a ton of quality of life skills, from Blight Resistance, Part Breaker, Speed Sharpening, Protected Polish, Wirebug Whisperer, Guard Up, Evade Extender, Stun Resistance. These will all add to the quality of a hunt, making it feel easier than it is. But of course there are cons. One of the biggest cons for this build is we don't have any points in the guard skill, meaning that if we do have to block an attack, we won't be able to block it as effectively as if we did have points in the skill. And the other con is, unfortunately, you kind of need a decent talisman for this build to work. The talisman, having maxed out protective polish, can be replaced with other strong talismans. For example, if your talisman has weakness exploit level 3 or crit boost level 3 or something like that. But regardless, this build does need a decent talisman to work. But should you have that, then you'll have in your hands one of the stronger budget builds that is available to the lands. And this build should easily see you through to the end of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak's story and the start of Afflicted Monsters. Now, as always, these builds are not set in stone, so if there is something you don't like about them, you can always replace the decorations, talismans, whatever, with something that better suits your playstyle, which is one of the great things about Monster Hunter. But what are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you another full budget build, this time for the Lance in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.